Welcome to the Menopause Wonder Show, unlocking the wisdom and secret tips for flourishing during perimenopause. I'm your host, Miyako Hazama, on a mission to unveil expert insights for your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Ready to embrace your prime years with ease, more vitality, and joy? Let's dive in. Are you a woman approaching perimenopause or already experiencing its challenges? As a menopause energy expert, I understand how overwhelming and exhausting this transitional phase of life can be. That's why I'm excited to bring you this insightful interview with Helen Iwata, the Less Effort, More Impact coach. Helen shares her personal experience and practical tips to how to manage perimenopause's physical and emotional challenges and turn them into opportunities for your growth and success. Don't miss this interview on Perimenopause Women's Guide, Less Efforting in Your Perimenopause Years. Join us for an enlightening and honest conversation. Let's go.
Let's get yeah. So today we have an incredible guest, my dear friend Helen Iwata, the Less Effort, More Impact coach who knows exactly what you're going through. Helen is helping women leading to success and business communication coach. And she has her personal story around perimenopause. So thank you, Helen, for coming into my show.
Thank you, Miyako. I am thrilled to be here. I'm absolutely honored to have been invited and to have this opportunity to talk in quite a different way from what I normally do. So I believe that through our conversation, we're going to be really kind of opening up and talking about perimenopause, which I probably wouldn't normally do at this level, even though I do a lot of work where I'm supporting women in business. So what I do is, I help women in business to do brilliant work without sacrificing their personal lives. So
exactly.
as you mentioned, known as the Less Effort, More Impact coach.
Yes.
And I've been through the burnout myself multiple times. I've gone through burnout in the corporate world. I was working in the corporate world for 20 years around here in Japan, experienced burnout, seen it in those around me. And that is what made me really passionate about supporting women. And so I'm now in my 10th year of my own business, supporting women to do things in a very different way, less effort, more impact.
Yes. And today's topic is actually less efforting. And during this really sensitive and challenging years, and how you can transition into a different level of more like fulfilling life with less efforting. So that's, I'm so thrilled to have a conversation, deep dive into the real life story of not like other you see elsewhere, but from your personal history. So I'm so excited about it. And we would like to start with challenges perimenopause women is going through. And according to the study, the Journal of Women's Health, you won't be surprised that nearly like 90% of women have experienced some kind of like a really challenging stage in life. And they feel like it's very difficult to move on like this. So going back to you, what was your personal maybe experience around this really delicate topic, and how was other like your students have experienced this?
So I'm going to talk primarily about my experience here because we can be really specific on that one as well.
Definitely.
And I'm quite happy to talk about this openly to support everybody who's watching or listening.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I started to experience perimenopause maybe around 4 years ago or so. So
Mm-hmm.
oh wait, no, 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm 54 now, so it was like, very late 40s that I started to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the first things that I noticed was the headaches and my first
Yes.
experience of migraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when the first time that happened, it was before the pandemic. It was when I was in the UK visiting my parents, and
Ah.
I just suddenly it just hit me. I was like, I have to just lie down on the sofa. I cannot do anything. It's terrible headache. I felt nauseous. I was like, oh, what is going on?
Mm.
Um, and I believe that was related to perimenopause, and then from then on, it started to become a fairly regular thing, unfortunately. And
Yes.
let's maybe stay with that topic of the headaches first of
Mm-hmm.
all for those who are experiencing it. So
Yes.
I actually, I consulted you,
Mm-hmm.
Miyako, because this was a real big challenge, and so you gave me
Yeah.
some very, very practical techniques to use
Mm-hmm.
to help to alleviate the headaches. And so the headaches now, they're not as intense.
I'm
Um,
so happy to hear that
they
because
are
it
they are not as
really
they're not
yes.
as frequent. Now, I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to say they've gone completely.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a huge, huge difference. And now I know how to deal with them a lot more effectively than in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is a thing that I'm sure that many women can relate with,
Yes.
is a lot of women are really, we've got to push through. Like if we're feeling bad, we've got to push through, and we've got all our responsibilities to other people, and we've got to do things. And so
Mm-hmm.
then we don't take the time to rest. This is also,
Exactly.
a big part of the coaching that I do, as well as that importance of really prioritizing your well-being,
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing your health, and your thinking as well, because it's those messages that you say to yourself about, oh, I've got to look after everybody else. You've really got to look after yourself first, so that you can look after everyone else, and
Oh.
especially
Mm-hmm.
during perimenopause. So what I learned was that it's okay to rest. It's actually super effective to rest. So now,
Mm-hmm.
whenever I feel that coming on, I am okay. I'm going to lie down,
Yes.
right? It's like, what's going on. And let's,
Exactly.
again, wanting to be very open about this, we actually had this recording scheduled for yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and I contacted you, Miyako, right? And I said,
Yeah.
Miyako, I'm not feeling my best today.
Mm-hmm.
And so we rescheduled to today, where I'm feeling much better.
Yeah, that's
So
great. Thank you so much for sharing that real story, right?
yeah, absolutely. And so that's a kind of hopefully a key takeaway for people listening and watching, is to ask people when you're not feeling great,
Mm-hmm.
to look at those opportunities to reschedule. I actually, so far, actually one time,
Mm-hmm.
I was really not feeling good, and I had a client coaching
Mm-hmm.
call. Um, and he it was a gentleman, Japanese gentleman, and he asked me at the beginning of the call, how are you? Like you normally start off,
Yeah.
and normally I'd be saying, yeah, I'm great. And I just, like, I had to be honest. I'm like, I am not actually feeling at my best. And he's like, oh, really? And
Wow.
he was very considerate, and he said, would you like to reschedule? I said, is that okay with you? And he's like,
Mm.
absolutely. So it's possible. This is the thing, is, let people know if you're not feeling great.
Wow.
And that's, what I would really, really strongly advise people, is let people know if you're not feeling great, because people can be a lot more accommodating than you maybe think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And thank you so much for sharing this, like what you're experiencing and going through, because it's not like, the university text guide or the women's guide and you check it and Google it. No, it's like every day you're your bodies have voice, right? And we talked about it a lot. But during this sensitive time, I really appreciate that you shared how you've been kinder to yourself. And you already shared the tips that, many of the listeners or what you are watching here, but you already got this juicy stuff of like, okay, it's okay to share. It's okay to say, I'm not feeling well, because I just shared a post yesterday about how women like feel ashamed of sharing that they're like struggling with this like a heaviness or tiredness or even like a migraine in the workplace too. So it's like they're like a feeling of fear of being too vulnerable to have that position to be secured for you. Like, how am I to be like saying that, like showing up my weaknesses? So that's something you already shared.
Yeah. And you know what, Miyako, I would say, let's turn that round and let's make it a strength. Because when you have that courage to say to people, I'm not feeling my best, then that is not being weak. That's being strong, because you're speaking up, and you're actually speaking up not just what's the best for you, but what's best for other people. Because if you're going into a work situation or whatever it is, even with family, and if you're not at your best, but you're kind of pushing through, you're not going to get the best results. You're not going to get the best performance at work. In, for example, conversations with family, you're probably not going to be fully present and having the sort of conversation or quality time or whatever it is. It's not going to be at that same level. So it's much better to really be open about this. And then you can take some time to rest, recover, and then you come back and you're feeling much better.
That's so awesome, because just by understanding what's possible for us, and like changing from the perspective of showing our vulnerability or weaknesses, but turn it around, and how can we, together with your family or your colleagues or boss, how can we make the best of that, our time together? Even like this, our podcast, like even this interview, if we were like feeling, oh my goodness, not feeling well, then you understand our energy, right?
Like if we had recorded this today, it would have not have been the same conversation at all.
Yesterday and today, totally our energy level was different. And it's like real, but it's okay to have like at the end of the day, what's important for you is what I heard you say. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm super thrilled about it. And have you also seen like your students have the difficulty in this kind of actually managing your changing health?
So with a lot of the women who come into my programs, they're not necessarily quite at the perimenopause level. They're a lot of the women in my programs are kind of more mid 30s to late 40s. Some are into 50s, but and the ones who are experiencing that, it's exactly these conversations. So this is why, what we cover in my program, even though my program is not specifically designed for perimenopause, it totally applies, because we're really looking at looking after yourself so that you can be at your best in your work, in your life.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. So let's talk about more of what you are actually finding out, or you are like promoting about the less efforting, because especially like if you are listening in Japan, like in a culture of Japan, we think that work is efforting. It's like we keep learning, practicing, but also efforting, and without effort there's no success. Like all these corporate type of education. I also got like 34 years in the corporate. Okay, do like effort, like sweating and do the work, action. So it's like Zig Ziglar type of, go. And so for me, like your word of less effort, but more impact is really, wow, is that possible, right? So I think that is like a true honest response. It sounds like a counterintuitive for us, right?
Oh, it's totally, that's the whole point. Just as you said about effort and sweating, I was thinking in perimenopause, when you've got hot flushes going on, there's enough sweating.
Too much sweating, like night.
So that was another one. When we're talking about my symptoms, so like the headaches and then the hot flashes. So I do have that, and it's just a kind of a joke with my husband. It's like, oh, here we go. Woo.
Like, you need fans.
Right. But the thing is, I think as well, this is another, maybe a little tip, and we'll come back to the efforting in a moment, is the more you're telling yourself, oh, this is such a terrible thing. Oh, I feel so terrible. Then the more terrible you feel. So the more you can just kind of have fun with it and say, oh, here we go again.
Oh, yeah, that's here we go. Yes. Like let that like air and energy flow that we did together, like that, be really playful,
right,
about your being too.
And there was I don't know how many viewers and listeners are familiar with the character Flash Gordon. So like from many, I think the Flash Gordon series was originally in the 60s, like way back.
Yes, and then, I remember that.
And then there's been like, I think maybe a movie afterwards or something. But I remember there's this line and it's like, Flash Gordon approaching. And so when I'm like this, my husband's like, Flash Gordon approaching.
It's like a new character, like your avatar, like whatever.
Exactly.
We can call it. Oh, yes. It's another part of me. But we can be playful with that.
Exactly. So it's just about like, it is what it is. Just kind of roll with it. To me, that's kind of a really effective way to deal with a lot of the perimenopause symptoms. So back to your topic of efforting, right?
Thank you for giving us extra tips already, right?
Yeah. So when I talk about less effort, I'm not saying no effort. Right.
Yes,
so this is a key distinction. So some people go, oh, but what? No effort? You've got to put in some effort. What I'm talking about is it's really about optimization. You might think of it in that way. Is how do I have the minimum effort and the maximum impact? That's that's really about how to look at it.
I see. And yes, sorry. Yes, please.
Well, I was just going to say, so when we think about, what is that effort? So effort, we often think of physical effort, and that is a big one, right? And especially this relates to what we're talking with perimenopause.
Oh, I love that,
perimenopause.
Whatever.
Yeah. Perimenopause. Well, we could also call it merry menopause. Let's make it merry menopause.
Merry time.
So when you think about that, you've got a lot going on, so you don't want to be making extra effort. There's already, it's a challenging time anyway, and there's a lot of kind of physical symptoms come along with it. But also what I look at in terms of effort is mental effort, emotional effort, not just physical effort, but mental and emotional effort. And that's really about your ways of thinking, your thought patterns. So a big part of what I coach in is really examining your thoughts and to choose your thoughts very carefully. Because if you're telling yourself things like, so I'll give you a really specific example here. I used to say to myself, I don't have time. I was always like, so much to do, busy. And this was a constant kind of subconscious phrase in my mind. I don't have time. And and very often, actually not just subconscious, but saying it, I don't have time, saying to family or whatever. And then I started to realize this whole the power of thoughts. And so I realized that I could actually change that from
Mm.
I don't have time to I have time to do what's important for me.
Yes. That's
And
huge
that was a game
mindset.
changer. And I'll tell you the specific story of
Yes,
how
because I
this
wanted to ask
happened.
you.
Yeah,
Yes. They must be
specific
origin,
story.
right?
Oh, there totally is an origin when I had this like this aha moment of like,
Mm.
wow. It was one of those many days where I was like, I've got so much to do today. It's like busy day, busy day, busy day. And then I was actually I started in the morning just watching a webinar as
Oh,
I was getting ready. And I
yes.
got really interested in this webinar.
Mm-hmm.
The webinar went on for 4 hours.
Woohoo!
And I watched the entire thing,
Wow.
right? And yet I had told myself at the beginning of the day how busy I was. But then when I started, I got really interested in this webinar.
Mm.
That then became my priority. That became what's
Yes.
important for me.
For you. Yes.
So that's what I'm saying is, it's not
Right.
I don't have time. It's I do have time for what's important for me because I made that important then. And it's the same thing like, when my daughter came in from she was after what do you call it penny boarding. It's kind of like
Mm.
a small version of skateboarding, and she
Mm.
came off her penny board and she got like gushing blood out of her knee. Right?
Woohoo! Yeah.
In that sort of situation, I stop what I'm doing. I have time for what's important for me, looking
Yeah.
after her and getting her all bandaged up and
Yeah,
everything, right?
definitely.
So I have time for
Mm.
what's important for me.
Mm-hmm.
And just changing that thought pattern is really, really powerful.
Mm. Because
Yeah.
you have the power to
Yeah,
change what's important for you at that right moment.
exactly. Yeah. And
Mm.
even not just at that right moment, but
Mm-hmm.
as you are even looking at your day or your week or whatever it is,
Mm.
this is actually probably a whole separate topic, but just to give a
Yeah.
little taste here, is that so often we have these assumptions that I
Mm-hmm.
have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And then when we look at it, maybe they're not things that are important for you. They're
Mm-hmm.
things that are important for other people. And
Mm.
this is a time when
That's
perimenopause is the time
deep.
when, it is important to look after yourself so that then you can be the best person for other people too.
Wow. Because
Mm.
what I notice during like conversation with other women or even my student is that many women have a lot of things. You can't imagine just like a 20 tasks,
Oh,
but in
yeah.
addition, at home, and
Mm-hmm.
even like you have to call your parents or
Yeah.
taking care of your pets, or you have to
Yeah.
sometimes prepare a special meal for your pets too, like, having
Oh,
some
yeah.
illnesses, right? It happens.
Yeah.
And just looking through these tasks and how to just prioritize this, it makes
Mm-hmm.
them feel worse,
Yeah.
actually. And
Yeah.
that's what happened. Like I often call this like a recurring pattern
Mm-hmm.
of making your symptoms worse because there's a like hormonal
Yes.
really imbalance happening, and we are
Yeah.
actually activating that
Yeah. Yeah.
by doing all these like feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So you are pointing
Yeah.
out that what's important for you
Exactly.
is a key
Yeah.
word that I took for myself
Yeah.
too.
That's one of the phrases that it's actually number three of the kind of the key phrases that I work with is do
Mm-hmm.
what works for you.
Yes.
Right. So and I can just sort of share those with you as well is
Mm-hmm.
so number one, because we've already kind of touched on these a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, choose your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, listen to your body. And number three, do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And especially during perimenopause, because it's so easy for your thoughts to wander and to go into negative territory. It's
Yes.
so easy to be feeling unwell and kind of ignoring it and pushing through when the much more effective thing to do is to pay attention to, listen to your body, and take care of yourself. And then do what
Yes.
works for you is because that certain things are going to work better for other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about what works for other people, because it could be different for you. And focus
Yes.
on what works for you, and prioritizing yourself.
That's so beautiful. And true to your thought is,
Mm,
I mean, actually, I'm also practicing it daily. And as
mm.
I observe myself, I choose my thought, it's like a muscle training because
Oh, it
it's like,
totally is.
as like, it's like breathing. We
Yeah.
can get better at it.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and it takes sometimes time. So
It does take
what
time.
would be your like a tips or advice about this first point of choose your thought?
So with this, I truly believe that having others to talk with is so
Mm-hmm.
powerful, because
Mm-hmm.
it's very, and this is in my group program especially.
Mm-hmm.
One woman will maybe say something and not realize the
Mm.
thought pattern behind it. And
Ah,
then
yes.
everybody who's listening, especially after that we've been together for a little while, they'll
Mm.
catch it like, oh, she's kind of, she's going into that negative thought where she
Yeah.
could be thinking of it in a different way. Because you often
Beautiful.
you don't catch it yourself. So,
Mm.
having a close friend who's really supportive and can catch you when you're going into those. I mean, obviously they can't hear what's in your head, but they can get a sense of what you're thinking from what you're saying and what you're doing.
Exactly.
So having that support, which is why I am such a strong believer in having a coach or being
Mm-hmm.
part of a program,
Mm-hmm.
and also having, close friends who are supportive in that way as well.
Yes, because it's oftentimes takes time or maybe need a little bit different, like a digging into
Mm,
your like the word that we use or even like a thought pattern. And
yeah.
if someone can address during the
Mm-hmm.
coaching or whatever
Yeah.
the group discussion, oh, you are doing it again. And then I said,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
goodness,
Yeah.
why? How come I did it? Like it's really the like brainwashing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that works.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you said, it is training. It's training yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this relates to being kind to yourself, is not expecting you to get it immediately,
Mm-hmm.
but to work on it gradually and then see the improvements.
Yes. And thank you so much for sharing. And about like the second point of listening to your body,
Mm,
people sometimes say things like, "Oh, I don't know how to listen to my body. I never did it."
mm,
Because
mm.
and sometimes I also feel myself that if I were really focusing, like I'm actually writing my book at this moment, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
focused, I want to finish this chapter. Oh my goodness, I'm so in, like
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing, but I haven't
Mm,
listened to my body, like I have an eye strain or whatever. So
mm-hmm.
what would be your like a little tips about like, okay, it's time to listen to my
Mm,
body. Like
mm-hmm.
how you can make it in your daily life situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And a super practical one on this as well, which is what I do every day, every morning. I have my planner, which is strange because normally I have it right next to me, but it's actually in the other room at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a paper planner,
Mm-hmm.
and I write down in that planner each morning. I actually I track my cycle still because I'm in
Oh
perimenopause, so I
yes,
am
that's
still having
important. Yeah.
periods
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, not as often as in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
they just pop up occasionally. So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm tracking that
Mm.
to see where to see what's going on cycle wise, and then I also make a note of how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that little bit of time in the morning, it's usually just after breakfast. I'm having my cup of tea, and I'm making a note of that. So it's an opportunity to just check in. Okay, how do I feel today?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is just so important because, as I said yesterday, I realized I am not feeling great. This is not an ideal time to be doing a video. So that's when I contacted you and said, maybe
Beautiful.
we can change it. So,
Yes.
there may not be there may be things that it's not so easy to change. And then surprisingly, there may be things that you can change. So I would say that's a really easy thing to do, because it's like, create that habit of, attaching it to something that you already do in the morning. So if if you have your tea or your coffee or whatever it is that you do, and just taking a moment, you could have a notebook or something close to the teapot, or I don't know if you use a teapot. I do, because I'm British.
Yeah. I know how you love tea.
Yeah, make it so that it's really easy for you to do.
Oh.
It's not a big task. It's just make a note. Okay, how do I feel today? And for some people, if it's some people, you'll kind of get it immediately. Some people, you might need to just sort of sit and just sort of maybe go into a little bit of a meditation. And if people are not so familiar with meditation, because a lot of people, if you're not meditating, you think, oh, it's so hard. I've tried meditation and I can't do it. I always have thoughts. Well, that's actually normal, right?
Yes,
It's just a case of letting them go.
Right. Love it.
So just even just like sitting and breathing, which of course you're the expert in, just taking a few breaths and just say, okay, wait, how am I feeling? How am I
Be
feeling
honest.
today?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And then just make a note of it.
Yes. Really beautiful, because I also, I think I learned from you and started this kind of journaling, maybe a year or maybe around a year ago. And I'm being really consistent about doing this. And when I did it, I noticed that even like for 10 minutes, just like quiet my thought and see what I am like thinking in a different, like from outside, and be honest with yourself. I love the fact that you have like a cup of tea, whatever, that triggers that, okay, I would love to do. And if you find something valuable, like you took action for rescheduling our call, then you feel, okay, this works. So I love the fact that you share these really beautiful tips that you can apply every day, and just try it out and see how it feels. And it comes down to like a last part of the do what works for you.
I want to actually just pop in with another point, because I can almost feel the objection that some viewers and listeners may have.
Yes,
is
that's
because
important.
of based on what I've just said, is they may think, oh yeah, but I can't reschedule this thing. And I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I know it can be difficult for people to hear, because we have all of these assumptions that we make. And so like, oh no, I can't possibly do that because of, right? So you might say, yeah, I'm feeling rubbish today. I am not feeling my best, but I still have to go to work, or I still have this, I still have to give a presentation at work, or I have something like that. So fine, I'm not saying that it's going to be possible to reschedule everything just because of how you feel. You can still do those things. It may be important to still do those things. At the same time, be kind to yourself. So where you can schedule in a little bit of extra rest time before or after, lower your expectations for what you're actually going to do. Like if you have a meeting and you've got to do a report or a proposal or whatever it is, and you may have expectations that you want to do it up at this level. Well, great if you can do that. And it may be challenging if you're not feeling at your best. So what if you did it at this level and still said, that's actually okay?
Yes. So lower your hurdle. So it's not like a pushing, or I have to get better, but you're saying like, 1% better and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, and because what I find so often, I've had this so many times, is when I've lowered my expectations, or I've said to myself, actually, I don't need to do that. And then it becomes easier and I'll actually go and do it anyway. It's
Yes,
just taking
that's
that pressure off
surprising.
yourself
Yes, just
is so
pressure.
powerful.
Yes, I
Yeah.
also notice myself even like the different thought or pattern of I can do it, but I'm
Hmm.
tired. Like these kind of inner mind
Yeah.
battle is happening,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
it consumes our energy, right? So
Terrible.
20% of our energy is like consumed in like a brain mind
Yes.
pattern.
Yeah.
So you don't want to like consume that in that way, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody is. I'm not putting my value in myself. Why
Yeah.
am I doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you let it go and say, it's okay if I don't, and then it becomes easy to do it, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's
Take the pressure off.
surprising to
Yeah.
take this kind of pressure off and
Yeah.
really stick to the point that you gave us a wonderful tips that we actually do not no effort, but less
Hmm.
efforting.
Less, it's minimum. What's your
Minimum.
minimum effort for your maximum impact in whatever it
Mm,
is that you're doing?
right. So
Yeah.
these are the really practical tips.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
is there any other like people are saying, "Oh, I can't do that." You know, if it often happens like people are too busy on the table.
Right. Yeah. So there's in term when we talk about rest
Mm-hmm.
or taking a day off work, for example, um, people feel guilty
Yes.
or lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another one where it's the thought patterns and it's actually choosing your thoughts because you can say to
Yeah.
yourself, "Oh, I'm so lazy," or you can say to yourself, I'm being really wise and taking care of my energy today so that I
Mm,
can be at my best tomorrow."
beautiful. So it's like you are reframing
Yes.
the positive impact on
Yeah.
yourself and
Yeah.
appreciate that you have that allowance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another reason why, as I said,
Mm-hmm.
I really strongly believe in having support in something
Mm,
like this because it can be very difficult to do those reframes yourself. Like
mm.
you're only seeing here, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
you
yes.
don't know that there's another way of looking
I think, yeah.
at things.
So
Yeah.
like we want to see outside of our box, and then if we weren't allowing ourselves to see the other
Hmm.
way, then okay,
Yeah.
why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really unbelievable, but it's often the case. Like, okay, the breakthrough happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of that story. It's the story of like there's some kind of military general or something like that, and he's riding through the village on his horse, and he's wearing a hat,
Mm-hmm.
and the villagers are watching, and they start arguing, like, was he wearing a red hat or was he wearing a blue hat?
Mm.
And some like, no, he's wearing a red hat. He's wearing a red hat, and it's like, no, 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 it's a blue hat. It's a blue hat. And then it turns out that the hat's red on one side and blue on the other.
Love
And
it.
so it just depends on which perspective they have, where they're looking from. So that's why it's so helpful to have somebody else around you who can give that extra perspective.
Oh, I love that insight you bring because I think we can be
Mm,
wiser to not just like, to, to, to collect all these information, but finding what not to focus or
yeah,
finding like you told us about the prioritizing, but
yeah,
what's really important at the end of the day
hmm,
when you feel something, okay, it's too much, or I have to do this and that, but my physical condition is not good. And then you have a choice and you can prioritize, you can be honest to yourself and maybe honest to your work colleagues your clients or your family, and then allow them to also be like that person.
Absolutely.
So you are actually
a
sending
role
the sign,
model.
you're a role model of being
Role model.
who authentically who you are, like beautiful Helen as
Yeah.
you, and helping
Yeah.
each other in a beautiful, like a group or whatever environment.
Yeah.
And then you actually have that room for more growth. So what I absolutely like love about this it's very sensitive years and transitional years, but it's a really just to see it in your way. There is a moment of self like growth in another dimension.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's so fantastic. So, and let me give you another really specific example from a client who was, she like a lot of the women that I work with, they have a very strong sense of responsibility. And so, and right, I'm sure this for those watching and listening, it's the same. You have a strong sense of responsibility.
Exactly.
And so she felt that she couldn't take time off work. And if she took time off work, then of course she had to be checking her emails regularly.
Yeah.
And so she actually took a day off work. She didn't take her computer and she didn't check her phone. And she went the entire day without checking her emails. And she said she had that battle going on in her brain because part of her brain saying, something terrible might be happening. You must check your emails. You must check your emails. And she didn't check it. This was a Friday. She took a Friday off, and she didn't check her emails. And then she actually managed to stop herself from checking her emails all through the weekend. I was so proud of her.
Wow,
and then, of course,
amazing.
she goes back to checks her inbox on Monday. No problems whatsoever.
I love that. And wow, that reminded me of the conversation I had with one of my students. And I also shared that, okay, when I did exactly like that, I noticed that, okay, people can do without me. Like, it was so like huge aha moment of epiphany. I thought during my corporate day, I thought people always needed me. Like even my team needed me.
Right.
And I have to be with them, or I have to give some advice or support. But they are doing their work and doing they're fantastic. And I said, okay, how come I put in myself as a main heroine, always cheering on and helping. But I might be like, doing extra work for them and to myself.
Yeah, it's just not necessary. Right.
So it's a really, really the big reminder for me.
Absolutely. And we talk about ego, right? It's our ego. For women, I would say it's your she-go.
Right.
We want to feel important. We want to feel significant. And so that's another part of it is why it can be hard to take that time off, because how are people going to cope without us?
Yeah, beautiful. So you can apply this in not only work, but your family.
Yeah.
That happens, hey mom, you don't need to take care of all your family members, right? Or your parents or whatever. And you can apply.
Yeah.
And so I think, maybe around this time, you might also feel like, okay, I can do this less efforting, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It sounds so easy. Not easy, but it's like the easy flow of energy there.
Yeah. As you were just mentioning about family as well, that also brought to my mind the topic of mum guilt, right? So when you're at work and then you feel guilty because you're not taking care of your kids, and even when they get older, you're not paying enough attention to them or whatever. So that's another of these things that goes back to your thoughts and getting focused on where you are now. And also listening to your body so that you can be at your best to support the people around you.
Wow. So this thank you so much for sharing your deep insight, including your story and your beautiful student like experiences, a breakthrough. So we already covered all those 3 tips. And is there any tips that you want to share?
The other one that we didn't really get into is if you don't have somebody who's there to talk with at the time, and there's a way to start to examine your thoughts a little bit more, is journaling, because you mentioned that very,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
briefly. So that's something else that I do myself, and I encourage my the women in my programs to do as well.
Oh, yes.
Is I mean, I also say do what works for you, because some women just don't like it. In fact, I have a couple of women in my programs who don't like the idea of journaling, written
really?
journaling.
I see.
But they like to do audio, so they record
that's
their
a
journal.
good idea.
Yeah, and then listen back to it. So again, it's do what works for you. But the power of doing something like that is you get to examine your thoughts. You get to see the thought patterns. So, you know, when I do it, I'll journal, and then I'll go back and look, you know, what was I writing a little while ago? And I'm like, oh, that's what I was writing.
Yes.
Interesting. What was going on there? Yeah.
Yes. So journaling is definitely one of the tips that I learned from Helen, and it works for me. And I actually enjoying that.
Yeah.
Really. Because I can
Yeah.
see my growth.
Yeah.
When I look back at 1 year ago, like, okay, what I'm writing, you know, but sometimes I feel that, okay, I was doing the right thing. So that for the journey, exactly is a great point that we can actually try it from today, starting from today.
Yeah. And just test it out, do what works for you.
Yes.
So, you know, that's the main thing is, sometimes women will, have a go at something and like, oh no, I don't really like it. And then kind of give up.
Yes. Yes.
Well, there are other approaches. So, you know, and there again, go and talk to people and get some suggestions on other ways to deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Because if you're, you know, we don't want women to be suffering unnecessarily. There are so many solutions out there. So keep asking. If you're not, if something has not worked for you, look for another option.
Yeah. So today you've given us so much the greater tips and strategies, starting from like sharing your vulnerability, you know, really, you know, be authentic and have 3 tips exactly that works for you, like choose your thought. And of course, including that you listen to your body with a journaling and do what works for you.
Yeah.
And you are actually having this kind of deep conversation in your program too, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's not just the conversation, it's also, you know, applying what we've been talking about in a structured and supportive and fun way. I'm a huge believer in fun as well.
Yeah.
And another thing that I would just mention as well is what I'm starting to call the, you know, for those who understand Japanese, I know a lot of people who may be watching or listening maybe don't understand Japanese, so I'll explain it. There's this concept called aru aru.
Aru
right?
aru.
So aru aru. So aru aru means, oh yes, I hear you. I understand that. I experience that too. And so this is, to me, it's the beauty of talking about things like this, or in a group coaching program, for example, we have what I call the aru aru approach, or the aru aru effect. It's like one person's talking about this thing that I'm experiencing, and others are like, yes, I have that too. I experience, and so it becomes normal, and just that normalization of what you're going through is so powerful. And to me, it's amazing. It's the fact that more women now are starting to talk about perimenopause, about menopause, and normalizing it, I think is really valuable. And also going back to what we were talking about earlier on about then making it something that is taken into consideration in the workplace.
Yes, that's so important. Yeah.
Yes, and so that not so that people can be sort of like, oh, taking loads of time off. No, so that people can look after themselves and perform at their best.
Exactly. So what you share with me, the aru aru, and also the
Mm.
merry,
Merry menopause.
yes, merry menopause is like
Yeah,
how you take this as an opportunity for
yeah,
yourself, your physical being, and
yeah,
mental and emotional being, a well-being whole, and
yeah,
for others too.
yeah,
So that's so
yeah.
beautiful. And how can people can find you? You're doing a beautiful work on your group coaching and for women's success. So what would be the best place?
So I think we'll put a link with this video
Mm-hmm.
for the best place to go and check first, because depending on when you're watching this or
Mm-hmm.
listening to this, there could be something very exciting happening. And at
Wow.
the time of recording, there
Mm-hmm.
is something very, very exciting that I'm just about to announce. So
Wow. Can't
so
wait to hear
definitely,
from you.
yeah, definitely check out the link that's with this video. On social media, I am on LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
as Helen Iwata. I'm on Instagram, Helen Iwata, and also on Facebook. So
Oh. Yes, you are
come and say
everywhere.
hello, drop me a
Yeah.
message.
Yes, drop her Helen message, and on Instagram you might find, like cute little Helen with her beautiful daughter, and be fun, having fun and playful. So you'll be
Yeah,
surprised how Helen is enjoying not only her business success, but also sharing her insight, beautiful insight and practical tips that you can
yeah.
take in to actually upgrade and do less efforting with more impact, even if you're during perimenopause.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. So yes, drop me a message, drop me a DM, and yeah,
Yeah.
make it a brilliant and joyful day.
Yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day and enjoy your body. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.
I was blown away by Helen's burst of great tips in our deep dive conversation. She is such a role model of a truly giving person. What really stuck with me is that it's okay to share your physical challenges in your work and the private environment without feeling ashamed or embarrassed, because it can help everyone involved, including your family, your boss, and your colleagues. It's not about you, but the outcome we can achieve together. How amazing is that co-create way of thinking? You can practice it to become a stronger version of yourself and turn perimenopause into a merry menopause. Now, what was your biggest takeaway? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Helen and I appreciate your input and look forward to bringing you even more informative and inspirational episodes. Are you ready to take charge of your energy in your prime years and live life on your own terms? Sign up for my free video training series and discover the incredible power you already have to revitalize your body and mind during perimenopause. You can find the link in the description below. You'll learn the secrets that Asian women have been using for thousands of years to alleviate perimenopausal symptoms naturally and feel more alive, vibrant, and in control of your health. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.